Give her back to me! Where is she?
Hello collectors, welcome to a new how-to video from Collector Quest. Today we're going to be upgrading the eyes on this Annabelle doll from Trick or Treat Studios. Like most of you, I'm not very happy with the quality of the eyes that come in the doll out of the box, so I have purchased a new pair of eyes from Fort Seal Studios, and today I'll be showing you how this is done. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with the tutorial. And here we have Annabelle ready for her glow up. We're going to look under her bangs here, and there is a mesh that we need to cut under so that we are able to peel the wig back. Also on the back of her neck there are some hairs that are glued to the plastic, so I'm not going to mess with that too much since I don't want the wig to get messed up. This will at least allow us to peel it back. Then also make sure to remove her clothing, that way it doesn't get dirty or damaged while you're doing this process. We will need our Fort Seal Studios eyes. These are unfortunately not listed on their website, so just make sure to send them a message requesting, letting them know that you're working on an Annabelle doll and you need a pair of eyes that fit in it. They will know what you're talking about. Look how detailed these eyes are. They are so worth your money and they will look incredibly good in this doll. For this eye upgrade video tutorial, we're going to follow the same steps that are in my previous Glenn eye upgrade tutorial. Basically, we're going to remove her wig. We're going to cut a hole in the back of her head, which will allow us to stick our hand and then push out the old eyes. We will need an X-acto knife for cutting. It's the most precise one that I can use. Then also we will use this hot knife, which allows to cut through the hard plastic a little bit easier. Also, it wouldn't hurt to have a box cutter, which is a little bit tougher, just in case you run into any difficult areas to cut. Now that we have gone through the basis of what we're going to be doing, let's go ahead and get started by removing the wig. To do this, we're going to use our X-acto knife and we're going to cut along the edges of the wig or the hairline. So we can start on the sides. Also, we can notice that the wig is not glued all over the head, it's just on the edges. So let's grab our knife and start. I'm gonna start here on the front of the wig and I'm going to wedge this knife gently between the mesh and the plastic and just cut along. Trick or Treat Studios has definitely glued this one a little bit harder than the one on the Glenn doll or Tiffany dolls that I have done. So just take your time and be gentle so that you don't damage your doll. As you continue to cut along the edges of the hairline to remove the wig, it is okay if sometimes you notice that you have cut through the mesh and maybe some of the mesh still stuck to the plastic. All this is going to be covered once you put the wig back on and glue it. After a few minutes of cutting along the edges of the hairline, I feel like I have got to a good point where I'm able to remove the wig. So I'm going to turn her around and let's check out the back. As I had mentioned earlier, some of the hair on the back is glued to the neck, so I'm not going to mess with that too much, but I do see I have a little bit of mesh here that I can still remove. So I'm going to pull gently a little bit to remove it. Also, I want to get her hair out of the way for me to be able to work without damaging any of the hair. And I'm going to pull here. This is coming off pretty easy. And there we have it. I'm not going to remove the ones that are glued to the neck, as you guys see here. But I'm just going to be able to work with her wig still attached. I'm just going to put it to the side and make sure that it doesn't get damaged. After removing the wig, our next step is to use our hot knife, which I plugged in a few minutes ago. And we're going to use that hot knife to cut a hole in the back of the head of the doll, probably about 4 to 5 inches in diameter. That hole is going to allow us to stick our hand in and remove the old eyes that are inside the doll. After completing the cut with your hot knife the first time, I suggest going back a second time along the line and make sure that it is really cut through. This is going to make the removal of the plastic cap a lot easier. Now that we have completed the cut with the hot knife, we can use our X-acto knife to help us pry open the hole that we're creating in the back of the head. We can then pull off the cap very gently, not to damage the plastic. Use the X-acto knife as it is needed. And there we have it. We have created a hole on the back of the head of our doll. And we can see the inside, these two caps here holding the original eyes in. Our next step is to remove the caps that are holding down the current eyes inside the doll. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna grab our hot knife and we're gonna cut along the edges of those caps so that we're able to remove them. Here you guys can see them a little better. So let's grab our hot knife and then start the cutting. After cutting along the edges of the caps, you should be able to just peel them back with your hand like you see here, and then just gently pull them out. And there we go. Here's the cap. Now we're able to push the eye out through the front of the doll. And all we gotta do now is repeat the same process on the other side. Now I am done cutting out the plastic cap from the inside of the head, and I should be able now also to push out the plastic eye from the front of the head. After successfully pushing out both eyes, we can see that our next step will be to clean out the eye sockets. We can grab one of our Fort Seal Studios eyes and fit them in just to see how it looks, and we can see that the eye doesn't quite fit in yet. So what we're gonna do in this next step is remove all this plastic residue that we have from the caps that were holding the old eyes, and here I will show you how this is done. So before getting started with this next step, I have also put Annabelle's hair in a Ziploc bag just to keep it from getting damaged. What we'll need now is we're going to grab our X-acto knife and we're going to cut from the outside in. Basically, we're going to target all that residue plastic that we can see from the outside. This is softer plastic, so there is no need to use the hot knife for this step. Alright, continuing with the cleaning of the eye sockets, you guys can see that I have removed all the excess plastic that we had here with the X-acto knife, and now the eye fits in perfectly. I really like how it is close to the eye line of the plastic, and also it seems to fit in pretty well, so I'm pretty happy with where it is right now. What I like to do next is I like to grab this 180 grit sanding paper, and then I just grab a little piece of it. What I like to do with this is I like to sand down any excess plastic or rough spots that might damage the eye that I'm about to put in. So take your time with this step. It's not necessary, but it helps this look a little bit more pleasing aesthetically. Also, real quick, I want to mention what you guys see here on the lips is a request that my client had for his doll. He wanted me to cover up a little bit of the teeth area with more of a top lip. So I have used some wood putty to create a lip, which I will paint eventually, and you guys will get to see that too. And now let's get some sanding done. Alright, after sanding down most of the imperfections that I had seen around the eye socket here, I would like to bring in a little bit of black wash to blend in that area a little bit more. So for that, I'm going to use this brush that I have here that you guys see is a little bit thinner, and I'm going to paint around the eye line here on the socket to, like I said, blend in everything so you don't have those plastic areas showing up. For this step, I'm going to use this transparent black paint by Golden. I'm going to put a little bit of it on a dish, and then I will apply it with my brush around the eye line of the socket. What I like about this paint is that it is transparent, so if you apply it, it's not going to just make a dark black line around the eye socket. This makes it look a little bit more realistic and more aged. Also, I'm going to bring in this thicker brush to help me blend in things a little bit better. Also, I like to use a technique called dry brush, which means that you're using just a dry brush, and I will use this to help me remove some of the excess as I apply the paint around the eye socket. Also helps me blend it in with the rest of the eye area so that it looks more like an eyeshadow too. Alright, so I have allowed some time for the paint that I applied to dry up because I don't want the eyes that I'm going to fit in to get dirty. And if you guys see, when I turn her around, I also painted the inside of her head around the eye sockets just to cover as much area as possible, and that way we don't have any skin color plastic showing through once we install the eyes. For this part of the process, I recommend you guys to have an inspiration image. Here I have an image that I have found on Google, and I'm using this as a reference on how the eyes are supposed to look before I decide to go ahead and glue them. And you know, that's a permanent choice. So it is important that you guys get a good idea of the eye placement before you glue them. Once we have figured out the positioning of both eyes, we are going to go ahead and apply the glue. So for this step, I recommend using this glue that I'm showing you here. It's the Gorilla Super Glue, and it's a very nice precision tip that allows you to precisely just apply the right amount of glue that you need for this process. We're going to grab the super glue container, and delicately we're going to apply dots of glue around the eye socket that corresponds to the eye that we will be installing. This glue is pretty strong and the eye is actually pretty lightweight, so this should be creating a permanent bond between the eye and the plastic. Now we're ready to glue in our first eye, so I do recommend removing your glove from the hand that you're using to hold the eye in. This will prevent any of the plastic from the glove to get stuck on the eye or on the plastic inside the head. So we're going to insert our eye from the back of the head, and we're going to look at the eye, make sure that it's centered and in the position that we wanted, and then we just have to hold it for a few minutes so that the glue can stick and hold the eye. I have now allowed some time for the glue to dry up. Sometimes you're going to see a little bit of residue of glue on the eye itself. So what I recommend is using this Goof Off product with a Q-tip. What we're going to do is we're going to put a little bit of Goof Off on the Q-tip, and then we are going to grab the Q-tip and run it around the eye line as well, just making sure that we are removing the glue residue. Sometimes you're going to notice that some of the paint might come off when you're using the Goof Off, but that's something that you can easily fix with a little bit of paint again. Now we're going to repeat the same step that we did on eye number 1 for the eye number 2. We're going to find the right placement for it, hold it for a little bit. I have already applied the glue here, so that's why I'm holding it to stay in place, and just wait a few minutes. Both eyes have dried up now and they look to be very secured. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure and, touch them a little bit in the inside to make sure that they really are glued. For the next step that I like to do is I like to reinforce the placement of the eyes just in case, maybe you're handling your doll and you want to make sure that everything is in place and it's going to stay in place. I like to use some Gorilla Tape that I'm showing you here, and I'm going to use a couple of strips of this tape to secure the eyes in the inside like you're about to see here. What I like to do is grab a piece of tape and cut it down the middle. So I'm using my scissors here to cut through, and then just do a little bit of a cut, and you're able to then just rip it off with your hands. You don't have to cut all the way through. I grab one of the pieces of tape, and then I insert it in the head and tape it over one of the eyes. So you do one at a time, of course. Just tape it in and make sure that it's properly secured. After I'm done gluing and securing the eyes, I'll go one more time with the paintbrush around the eye line and make sure that I repaint all the black that has come off after removing any glue residue. And this last step brings us to the completion of the eye installation, but I'm going to take it a little bit further and I'm going to show you guys here in this video how we can better age the paint job on this doll. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a little bit of sanding paper, same 180 grit, and I'm going to sand over the cheeks and some of the parts of the face of this doll. This is going to allow for whatever paint I use to stick better and also to bring out some of the texture that the doll should have, being an old weathered doll. Next, I'm going to combine some of the Sepia paint by Golden. This is also a transparent paint. And I'm going to combine it with this black transparent paint that I used previously. I'm going to grab a little bit of both of these and I'm going to put them here on this dish that I have. Here's where I'm going to mix them. Add the Sepia and then I'm going to add a little bit of the black transparent paint as well. Then I will mix them with my brush. And you all can see how this combination kind of creates like a greenish, brown, dirty looking paint. So we'll mix it until we're happy with the type of color that we are getting. And then we will apply it to the doll with this bigger brush that I have here. This will help me cover a lot more area and it will also create some brush strokes that will look natural when painted on the doll. So I'm gonna wet the brush a little bit just to get the paint even thinner. Remember, this is a transparent paint. You don't wanna use regular paint because then you're gonna cover the area. I'm going to grab a little bit of the paint, then I'm gonna put the brush, I'm gonna rub it against a paper towel maybe to give it a little bit of that dry look too. And then I'm just gonna start painting on top of the face of the doll. This is going to make it look aged. Also feel free to wet the brush if you need to thin out the paint even a lot more. Remember, you don't want to cover the paint job on the doll itself right now. You just want to give it a little bit of a dirtier look. Then we can grab a microfiber cloth and then rub it on the face to remove some of the excess of the transparent paint. Remember, we want this to look like a coat of grime on the doll, so the lighter it looks, the better the result we'll get. We can then repeat the same process until we are happy with the result. We can brush again using the same paint or the same transparent paint that we have been using. This time we can go a little bit further and start applying it all over the face. Also remember, we need to cover the entirety of the head, except, you know, where the wig is going to be covering, but you want to make sure that the grime and the weathering looks consistent on the face and the neck and chest areas. As I mentioned, we will repeat the same weathering process on the neck and the chest, like we're seeing here. Alright, our weathering effect is dry and now we're going to get a little bit into makeup. I'm going to use these two brushes here to repaint the top lip that I created with the wood putty. I'm going to use a thicker brush to fill in and then the thinner brush to create the outline around the lip. I'm also going to use this red paint by Golden, it's Nepithol Red Light, and this paint really matches what we already have here. I'm going to apply a light coat to the bottom lip just to give it a little bit of that same tone of red that I'm using. Now with the thinner brush, I'm gonna go around the outline just to make sure that everything looks neat. Now I'm going to start painting the top lip. For that, I'm going to use a thicker brush to fill in as much area as possible, as you guys are about to see here. And then I will use the thinner brush to go around the outline and make sure that I have a perfect top lip shape. After covering most of the lip with the red paint, we're going to switch to our thinner brush and then proceed to do the outline. Great, so now we got her lips painted. They look pretty bright and new, so we want to make sure to weather them as well so that they match the rest of the face. And to do that, we're going to repeat the same process that we did earlier. We can either use the mixture of the sepia and the black transparent paint, or we can just use the black transparent paint, whichever is your preference. Great, now that we have completed the repaint of the lips and weathering them, we're approaching the final stages of the makeover. So next, we're going to glue back the cap that we removed on the back of the head, and here's how you can do that. To glue the plastic cap once again to the back of the head, we're going to use the same super glue that we used for the other parts of the process when gluing the eyes. It's pretty simple. We're going to apply a few dabs of super glue around the perimeter where we're going to glue the cap, and then we just put the cap on and hold it for a few minutes until dried. After gluing the head back together, we'll grab our wig and we will place it back on the head of the doll. We're going to find the right spot where it used to be. We're going to make sure that it is centered and also that it looks like it did originally. Once we have found the right spot, we'll grab our super glue and then we will apply the super glue along the edge of the hairline where the mesh used to be glued at. Once you have applied the super glue, gently move over the wig on top of the super glue you applied and apply a little bit of pressure. Let it dry for a few minutes. Once the top part of the wig has glued onto the plastic head, we're going to repeat the same process on the sides and also on the back to make sure that everything is secured correctly. And now everything is back on its place, everything looks good, so we can move on to the final touches. We're going to apply some black eyeshadow makeup around the eyes to make them look a little bit more smoky and a little bit more aged as well. Also, we're gonna accentuate the expression lines, so around the nose, the mouth, the chin, and anywhere that you think it will be needed. So for all this, we're going to use the matte LA Colors palette here that I have. I'm mostly going to use the black eyeshadow, maybe a little bit of gray colors as well. That's the black that I'm using. And I'm going to apply that black eyeshadow, like I said, around the eyes, mainly to make them look more menacing, a little bit more aged as well. I'm pretty happy with how the eyes have turned out. So now I'm going to use maybe a bigger brush to apply some of this eyeshadow around the cheekbones, anywhere where I need to maybe sunken her expression a little bit more. After applying some of the dark makeup to enhance some of the features and the sunken dark eyes, I feel that we're getting an Annabelle that definitely looks weathered and looks like a doll that has been around for years. So now what I'm going to do is going to enhance a little bit of the blush on her cheeks. I'm going to use my Amazon cheap color palette that I have here, and I'm going to find a color that kind of matches what she currently has on. So this will actually help enhance the realism of the doll. After applying the blush, we're complete with the makeover. Annabelle looks great, definitely more aged, and she's ready to pose for some photos. Collectors, this brings us to the end of our video tutorial. I hope you guys have been able to follow along and maybe even upgrade your own doll or get ideas on how to upgrade any other of your Trick or Treat Studios dolls. Please let me know in the comments below if you have any suggestions on any makeovers that you would like to see in future videos. And also, don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed the video and subscribe to help our horror community grow. I hope to see you guys in the next one from Collector Quest. Have a great day.